My Instagram specifically and my podcast brings me in several leads a week, enough to be a multiple seven-figure earner selling real estate.
How many downloads of your podcast do you get a month?
It's over 20,000 per episode. And so, it does really well. I don't know, per month depends on how many episodes we put off and who they are. Like I have certain episodes that have been over 100,000. I have other ones that.
Bright Ideas episode number 346.
Hey, I know what'll cheer you up. Welcome to the Bright Ideas Podcast, where we let proven experts help you to find the next bright idea to implement in your business today. And now, here's your host, Trent Deersmith.
This is unbelievable.
Its true force has never been fully understood.
10 years I've had that same intro and I still love it. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bright Ideas Podcast. As always, I am your host, Trent Deersmith, and my job is to find really interesting entrepreneurs who've accomplished extraordinary things and then get them to explain everything that they did to achieve those results so that you can take all those golden nuggets and implement them in your business starting today. And we're going to do that in just a few minutes. Before we get to that, a couple of very quick housekeeping items. Number one, if this is your first time listening to the show, you may not know that we have a very popular Facebook group for e-commerce founders. And in that group, you can make friends, you can network, you can get answers to your questions, you can participate in hot seats and so forth. And to join, it's free. Just go to brightideas.co/Facebook. And second of all, we're starting to do live streams with select guests that I have on the show. And these live streams happen generally after the episode. And the whole purpose is to go deeper and share screens and give you demos and walkthroughs and answer your questions. And if you want to make sure that you get notified of these learning opportunities, all you need to do is be an email subscriber, which you can do at brightideas.co, or make sure you're in the Facebook group that I already mentioned. So we're going to welcome my guest Jimmy here in just one moment. But before we do that, we got to pay some of the bills. So here is a word from today's sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Flowster. If you run an e-commerce business and are struggling to effectively delegate your highly repetitive work to your team, Flowster's workflow management software and pre-made e-commerce playbooks make hiring, training, and delegating to your team an absolute breeze. Check it out today at flowster.app. So on the show with me today, we have Jimmy Rex. Jimmy, welcome to the show. Thank you for making some time to be here.
Yeah, of course. Good to be here, my man.
So for the folks who aren't yet familiar with who you are and what you've accomplished, which in the real estate space has been pretty phenomenal, let's start off with that. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so I kind of do a lot of different things, but my main thing is real estate focus. I've been a real estate agent for the last 15 years, one of the top agents in my state here in Utah. And over the years, I've developed a couple different things that go along with that, a coaching program. And I have a couple books I've done now. I had a real estate book that was called The Next Wave of Influence in Real Estate. That was an Amazon bestseller and sold over 7,000 copies the first year. And then this last year, I just came out a couple months ago with a book called You End Up Where You're Heading, The Hidden Dangers of Living a Safe Life. But I'm just an adventurer, an entrepreneur. I love business, love investing, love real estate. And I have a podcast called The Jimmy Rex Show that where I interview top entrepreneurs and just influencers, different people that are changing the world in different ways all over the place. So I'm do a little bit of everything.
Very nice. So you were humble. I want people to understand, because they might be thinking, why is Trent having a realtor on his e-commerce show? So first off, what Jimmy didn't mention was last year he sold 375 houses, which is a crap ton of houses. And as you'll hear in our episode, digital marketing and social media plays a huge role in getting those houses sold. So I thought there would be some really great lessons to share, because rather than just interview just e-commerce folks all the time, I like to bring in different perspectives, because that's where some of the greatest learning opportunities can come from. So Jimmy, you started in real estate in what year?
2005.
And when did digital become when did you start using digital? And if it wasn't around the same time, when did it become kind of the main thrust of your marketing?
Yeah, so I actually was pretty far into my business. My first 5 years, I was just pounding phones. That's how I got all my business. And then I kind of built up a really good client base. I did a lot of client events and parties and charity work and kind of set up that base of my business as well. But in about 2015, I'm good friends with a guy by the name of Garrett G. He's one of my close buddies, and he has an Instagram page called the Bucket List Family. And these guys went over millions of views, and I was talking with him a lot, and he was teaching me how he was making money through using social media. And it just blew my mind how much money he was making. He was making 7 figures traveling the world with his family because of Instagram. And then I became friends with a girl by the name of Charlie Jordan, and she's an Instagram model as well. And she was dating one of my close buddies, my buddy Johnny at the time, and they were living in my house with me. And I started talking to her a lot, and I found out she was making some days upwards of $30,000 or $40,000 for one day to do an Instagram live, or making $8,000 for a post she was making. And my mind was just blown. And I realized that I was missing out on this entire economy, which was social media marketing. And so I really spent a lot of time, like Garrett and I, one of the things that he would do with his family is they would travel over the world, and they would, this Bucket List family had been to over 95 countries. They spend a week in each place, but he knows I'm a huge shark lover. I love sharks. I think they're the most fascinating creature on earth, and misunderstood. And so he was going to dive in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean with tiger sharks. And so I wanted to go with him. And so we went together, a little group of us. And he was one of the founders of a company the app was called Scan. And him and his 2 buddies that founded it got bought out by Snapchat for over $50 million. And so, I mean, these guys, he was on the boat with us as a partner. And I spent 4 days in the middle of the ocean as we would go between dives with the sharks, just racking these guys' brains about e-commerce and how they used all these different things and how they set all this up. And then having those conversations with Charlie all the time. And so I decided to put a real focus on social media marketing for my business. So starting 2016, 17, 18, 19, I really put a lot of emphasis on my social media, my Instagram, my podcast, my Facebook, all these different things. And now, like you said, last year, I think my team did like 375 homes, and over 40% of those leads came through social media, through marketing, through my Instagram mostly, and Facebook. And so, yeah, it really changed my whole business. Now, I get so much. I can put one good tweet out or one good couple stories on my Instagram. And if I do that the right way, I'll get 15 or 16 leads, people that want to buy homes, investment properties, as opposed to that would have taken me 2-3 weeks of calling people to get 20 leads back in the day.
That's awesome. So when you started, did you simultaneously try and get traction on 3 different channels, podcast, Facebook, and Instagram, or did you focus exclusively on one channel to begin with?
Yeah, when I started out, I was kind of trying to do everything, right? I was trying to see which ones would be the best for me. Originally, I got the most traction on Facebook because I already had a really good following on Facebook. But then I realized Instagram was where the money was at, where the easiest way to reach people was. And so that was after really understanding Instagram from Charlie, I decided to go after that hard. And so I ended up going in 1 year from like 4,000 to 25,000 followers. And then about 2 years ago, I started working with a guy by the name of Dan Fleischman. A lot of you may be familiar with who he is, but this dude is like a social media genius, and he started helping me a lot too and taught me how to do some more things. And so I built that up, quite a bit more. But now I would say, it's all 3 of those channels work really well for me. The ones that didn't work, I tried other ones that didn't work. LinkedIn, I didn't make it. I still have no idea what I'm doing on LinkedIn. Twitter, I don't get any leads from. But my Instagram specifically and my podcast brings me in several leads a week, enough to be a multiple 7-figure earner selling real estate.
How many downloads of your podcast do you get a month?
It's over 20,000 per episode. And so, it does really well. I don't know, per month depends on how many episodes we put off and who they are. Like I have certain episodes that have been over 100,000. I have other ones that, don't do as well, but we've been able to build it up and get some really cool guests. I recently had on Grant Cardone and Prince EA and some of these guys that are some of the biggest movers in the entire internet. Prince EA has over 2 billion views on his videos, and Grant Cardone, everyone knows who that guy is. And just all these different, like we had the governor race in Utah that just ended. And I had 3 of the 4 candidates that ran for governor on the podcast trying to push their platform because mine's, the one that has the people's voice here in my community. And so I've been able to thankfully build that up and just get amazing guests after amazing guests, and just really cool people that have, been able to help me build my own platform. And now it's kind of fun because you have a voice. You're able to give out messages, and every single podcast that I do, in some way or another, I'm able to pitch real estate without it putting it in people's faces. I'm providing value through the podcast and the information, but I'm reminding them every day that I'm a real estate agent if they want to buy or sell a house.
How'd you get Grant Cardone to be on the show? Do you use any of the high profile guests? As a matter of fact, do you use an agency to solicit them? Do you email them? What does that process look like?
Yes and no. I actually have done them all myself. I start reaching out to people. Like I've had some really big guests on my show. I mean, I've had Robin Sharma. I've had, there's literally, if you go to the list, I think there's over 150 Instagram verified guests that have been on my show, to give you an idea. But, there's people that, have a name. But the more I was able to get those guests, the more and more guests wanted to come on my show. So Grant, I'd had Robin Sharma on, and I'd had, Dave Meltzer, Brad Lee, some of these bigger influencer guys. And so when I reached out to his team and I showed them my numbers, I was able to show them who I've had on. He wanted to come on the show, which was really cool. And so I kind of, as a trickle effect, I started out, when I first started the podcast, I took all the most influential friends I have. I got buddies that have, I had a buddy that had been the National Player of the Year in college basketball, Jimmer Fredette. I had Kyle Van Noy, 2-time Super Bowl champion with the Patriots, was a good friend of mine. Tim Ballard, the founder of Operation Underground Railroad. Sean Reyes, the Attorney General of Utah. All these different people, Garrett and Charlie, like all these influencers. And I put them all at the beginning. And because of that, because I had 15, 20 good guests in a row, as I reached out to more guests, I was able to use them as the example that I had. And so it really grew very fast. So it was really cool. My original goal was to eventually get over 10,000 listeners per episode. And I hit that on Garrett's episode with the Bucket List family, because he shared it on his Instagram, and we went over 100,000 on his episode, on like episode 13, which was, kind of amazing. But yeah, it's getting in with a couple of those people. And then honestly putting a lot of work into, I just reach out to a lot of people and let them know, like, hey, I want to do this. Like I had Jordan Harbinger recently on the podcast. He gets over 6 million downloads every month on his podcast. I think he's got to be one of the 2 or 3 biggest ones in the entire podcasting community. And I talked to him a little bit about it. And same thing, he just reaches out to a lot of people. He just, he provides a lot of value. And because of that, people want to come on and show.
Did you start off, so for anyone that's listening, I want to have them take away an actionable strategy for guest recruitment. So here's what comes to mind for me when I hear what you're explaining. So I got to start my show. I'm going to go with my first circle of influence, people that I know who are credible. And then maybe I'm going to build this Dream 100 list of my ultimate guests, and I'm going to stack them from those with the largest following at the top of the list and those with the smaller followings at the bottom. And I'm literally going to treat it like a ladder and just try and work my way up until I get. Would that be a reasonably good strategy to follow?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good, like I had that list. I had 25 people that was like my dream list, and I've interviewed 2 of them. I had Grant Cardone and I had Dean Graziosi, who have both been on my show, are 2 huge guys in the internet space, real estate space. And so I had both of them on my show. But yeah, and it's really setting up those personal relationships and, providing value for them. So for example, I wanted to get Mitt Romney on my show. He's a big deal in Utah. He's our senator. He ran for president and all that. And so I called his team and I just said, hey, what would it take to get Mitt Romney on the show? And they're like, well, he's not really doing podcasts for just anybody. I said, I know. What would it take to get him on the show? And they said, well, we need 4,000 signatures to get him on the ballot, or they needed 25,000 or whatever. He's like, if you could get us like 4,000 signatures to get on the ballot, then we'd happily do it. Well, I had helped a kid, taught him how to throw parties and events and things back in the day. And he was throwing a huge party here in Utah. And I said, hey, you know how you've always said if I ever need a favor to call you? He goes, yeah, anything. What do you need? I said, I think I needed maybe it was like 800 signatures. I don't remember. It was a lot. It was like, there's no way I was going to get these otherwise. I was like, dude, at your next party, when are you having your next party? Set up a booth. I just need you to get signatures for people to get Mitt Romney on the ballot. So I ended up getting this dude, I ended up getting Mitt Romney. Yeah, I think I needed to get 800. I ended up getting like 1,200 signatures to help get him on the ballot. So I provided value. So of course he took 30 minutes out of his day to sit down with me and do the podcast. So it's getting creative. Like everybody needs something. Figure out what that is and provide it, and they will do the show for you, right? Like these celebrities are these people that have these big things. They have something they're trying to push. They have something they're trying to do. And so I just figure out a way to provide value for that. Now my podcast itself is the value, right? Like it's big enough now that it's worth it for people to come on because they get to, share their message or whatever. But like Prince EA, for example, I mean, that guy is one of the biggest influencers in the world, 2 billion views on his Facebook videos. And I did a video with him. I hired him to help me do a video that me and him did together. I wanted to do that anyway. So because obviously we started that relationship, he was happy to come on the podcast. And you do that with a few big guests. Now, if I email any random, person, I say, hey, here's who I've had on my podcast. And they see the numbers of my podcast, like they're dying to come on. They're very anxious actually to come be a part of it.
When you do an interview with a guest, do you do a one call, like do you do a pre-interview like you and I did, and then you do an interview later? Or do you find that these folks, that they're so pressed for time that you're lucky to even get one call in an hour out of them?
Yeah, with these guys, you're usually not going to have enough time to get that pre-call or anything like that. So what I do is once I get it set up, I'll send them an email and say, hey, if there's anything in particular you can send me that'll help me study for the interview, that would be great. But I actually do the studying myself. So I'll spend 3 or 4 hours usually per guest studying them to figure out what's going on with them. So, for example, I had who did I have on recently that was so excited about it? They were like, wow, man, you've really done your research. And they were super impressed. That it was, I had Glenn Sanford. He's the founder of eXp Realty. It's the fastest growing real estate company in the world, actually. I had Tarek El Moussa on, who's the star reality show of Flip or Flop. And I studied them for 3 or 4 hours each before the interview. And so by the time I get on the phone, I know so much about those guys. And they're just like, they actually say it almost every time on the podcast. Like, wow, you really prepared for this. Or afterwards, they'll thank me for being prepared for it because, the last thing they want to do is get on the phone and I don't know what I'm talking about, or I don't have much to say or whatever. So I just study them. Whatever, if they've been on other podcasts or if they have books, I'll read it. Like Robin Sharma, when I got the interview with him, 5 a.m. Club, that was one of my top 10 favorite books already. I'd already read it, but I revisited it and, made sure that when we got into the podcast interview, we could really dive into those details.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. All right. Now I want to transition, actually in a moment, we're going to transition our conversation to your use of Instagram, because you mentioned that that's where the money is. It's been highly effective for you. Before we do that, I do want to just bring our final sponsor message. So stay with us for that and we'll be right back. If you're running an Amazon wholesale reseller business and you're struggling to scale it up, I'd like to invite you to check out my wholesale e-commerce business system, or WEBS as it is now widely known online. WEBS is not a training course. Instead, it is the collection of 75 plus highly detailed workflow templates that my team and I have developed over the last few years. And without these systems, achieving a rank of number 254 on the Inc. 5000 would have been absolutely impossible. Check it out today at brightideas.co/webs. Thought came to mind as I was listening to my own ad there, Jimmy. Do you take sponsors for your show? Do you run ads in your show?
I do an ad. I have 2 sponsors. One that I do an ad right when it starts, and then one at the very end. That's it. During the episode, I don't. I would. To be honest, I've kind of been lazy about getting ads and stuff. I try not to overdo it, but at the same time, I think it's a totally normal thing for a podcast. I make enough selling real estate. The podcast I've never tried to monetize it more than enough to pay for itself and then a little bit extra. I wanted just more so I put the effort into getting the guests as opposed to getting the sponsors. How's that?
Yep. Fair enough. Well, the sponsors, if you get enough downloads, you don't have to look for the sponsors. They come find you. All the sponsors I've had in my show, I have never once solicited them. Every single time they've come to me, I just send them to my sponsor page and it says pick silver, pick gold, whatever, and send me the money. And that's what they do.
Yeah, same. They reach out to me. It's the same thing.
Okay. So now let's talk about Instagram, because I suck at Instagram. I put no effort into it at all. I literally do nothing with Instagram. And every time I interview somebody who's having success with Instagram, I grit my teeth because I think, why am I not doing more with Instagram? Maybe I need to make it a priority and so forth. So in your case, there was a time when you had no followers and didn't know what you were doing. What you mentioned, I think that you learned some from Dan Fleischman. Is that right? Like, how did you get started? And now, how do you manage your Instagram to get an ROI on the time that you would put into it?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is one of those questions you got to ask yourself, because it is a lot of work. Like, I'll start with that, right? Like, you wouldn't be mad at yourself that you're not good at swimming if you go swimming very few times or something, or what, pick your whatever thing you want to be good at. Instagram, it is like, it does require a lot of effort to get it built up. I'm at the point now where I actually don't spend much time on it. I did the entire month of September. I went off social media. I didn't spend any time on my Instagram. It was actually really nice. I posted a few things through my team, but I built it up so that I had a following. I wanted to have a platform so I could make a difference or do things I wanted to do. And, like today, we just had the election last night. I know a ton of freaking out. And so I just put up a picture of myself and I said, this is the winner for me last night, me, because I get to decide how I'm going to live my life. And this, I just basically said, it doesn't matter who the president is. I'm going to go live my life the way I want. And, and it's a message. I had a lot of people, over 25 people have reached out to me from that today and be like, man, I needed to hear that or whatever. And so I did want to build that platform up so I had a voice and could make a difference, and also so I could, make money through it, selling real estate. But it really is just a consistency. Like, you have to understand how Instagram works. So, like, you have to study from somebody. That's what I spent those 4 days racking the brains of Garrett and his partner from Snapchat. And then also, with Charlie, I had a lot of time I got to spend and talk with her. And so I really understood how to do that and why. And then it's just the consistency of doing it. Like, it's putting out great thing after great thing. I travel a lot, so that helped me kind of build a following up, because I was traveling all over the world. I went to 60 countries in a 3.5 year span. And so had a lot of cool photos to post. Doing the podcast was very helpful, because I was able to post a lot of cool content from these cool guests that I was meeting with and interviewing. And so, but it is that constant putting it out there. But one of the best advices I ever got is, what are 5 things that make you interesting? And focus on those 5 things. Like, what are 5 things that people would follow you for? So for me, I started picking the 5 things, like real estate, travel, my podcast, or just people that I'm hanging out with, right? And I started going through all these different things, that the undercover work that I do. And I started posting these 5 things. And people got consistency from me. They're like, okay, this is positive messages. They like following me. This dude's putting a lot of good material out there. And so they want to follow, they want to share your stuff. But then you do have to learn how to, like, partner with other people. So when I got the interview with Garrett, for example, he put it on his Instagram story as like one of the bubbles that stays on your Instagram page for like a month. And I went from 4,000 to like 11,000 users. And then Charlie posted it on hers for a couple months. And I went from 11,000 to 17,000. And then I started partnering with all these other people. I'd post my stuff in theirs, like Sean Whalen and Aaron Wagner, some of these guys I'm close friends with that had good followings. I got all of them to post me as well. And that was part of what was cool about the podcast, is it gives you a reason to go spend time with these people and to have material that you can then post. And so I was just combining all that. Like, the podcast, one of the biggest things about the podcast is it gave me a platform to have these conversations, to meet these cool people, to be able to have cool content to share on my Instagram. And so it kind of helped, they kind of built each other together.
So when you say the bubbles along the top, so I'm looking at your Instagram profile right now, you handsome W, and you've got under your pictures, there's a bubble for YouTube, a bubble for podcast, a bubble for blog, author. Are these the bubbles that you're talking about where they would stick you?
So those are the bubbles. And I got each of them to post, like, one of those bubbles was like interview on Jimmy Rex show. And so for a month or two, they had it up there. And so anybody that went to there, I mean, they have millions of followers. And so you pick up a couple thousand when somebody does that. But, like, I just would ask them, like, hey, would you mind keeping this up there, share it for a while? Or, hey, do you mind sharing this on your story a few times? But it's the consistency. And it's funny, there's not like any one thing that's going to boost your thing. I mean, I'm 240 episodes into my podcast. Literally, half of those people are household names. I've been posting all their material, all their things, and it's still, like, just slowly builds. But you gain 100 followers here, 1,000 here. Like, I went on the Brad Lee show, and I don't know if you listen to his podcast, Dropping Bombs. It's a top 10 business podcast, but I mean, I think I gained 3,000 or 4,000 followers from that, just because he has such a big following. And so, getting on other podcasts, having people on your podcast, these are the ways you kind of get that thing going. Yeah,
no kidding. Did you ever have to pay for any of the bubbles? Have you ever done any paid shout outs with other Instagrammers?
I did one paid programming thing with Dan Fleischman. It was a shout out on Dan Bilzerian's page. who has 26 million followers. But to be honest, like, I don't recommend it. Like, it did give me a few followers for a little bit, but they all dropped off anyway. They weren't the kind of followers that I was trying to attract. So for me, I did it the one time, and it was funny because it shot me over like 100,000 followers, and then I dropped right back down to where I was. So it was like kind of pointless to do it. That's why I don't recommend doing that.
So in looking at your recent posts, they're all photos. They don't have captions that are on them. If I click into what looks like the houseboating photo, do you write much? Let's just see. Hey, sad day. So there's little comments, but it doesn't really, you're not overtly trying to sell stuff. You're basically just giving people a window into your day-to-day experience. Is that sum it up?
A big problem that people have with trying to build their pages is they try to sell people all the time. And mine is more, I'm trying to attract people instead of sell them. Mm-hmm. I want to attract you to my page. I do use my stories to sell sometimes, like to sell real estate or try to get leads and things like that. But my page is much more like, this is what I'm about. I'm a sports guy. I'm a family guy. I have a lot of fun. I travel. I have a life that's interesting. I do real estate. I work out. Like, these are the things that I want. I'm trying to attract a specific type of person. And so all I post about is the stuff that, again, that's just me. And then as you attract the right people to you, you can then sell them otherwise. But I don't know. For me, I never wanted to do this to try to just sell. For me, it was about, I wanted to build a platform big enough to have a voice to make a difference. And so I've tried to keep it authentic, who I am.
Do you plan your content? And first of all, also, is your profile a personal profile or a business profile? Because I'm looking at mine unused as it is, and there's no bubbles on the top of mine.
You have to add those.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't even know if mine's personal or business. I think it's business.
I don't
even know.
How do you plan your content, or is literally you're just out there with your phone in your pocket and you're like, oh, this would be a cool photo, and you pull your phone out and take a picture and you upload it?
So when I was building my platform, it was very planned out. I posted once a day between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. I always made sure I had something to post every day, and every fifth photo usually was that different kind of category that I was trying to post about. I actually went on a lot of vacations to get pictures and photos. I mean, obviously I want to go anyway, but I was like, I needed content. Every time I did a cool podcast, I made sure I got content. When I was doing cool stuff with my friends, I made sure to get content. Mm-hmm. So the answer to that is no. I don't do that anymore. Now, if you notice, I post a lot less regularly than when I was building it up. And again, if I get super motivated to build it again, I know how to do that. And you do have to post more regularly. But currently, I'm not trying to grow it. I'm just trying to provide value for my followers at this point. And so, again, I'm at like 60,000 followers, which is fine. Like I got verified, which is one thing I wanted to do to help just have a platform to be able to talk about stuff that matters to me. And so now I'm not so determined to post something as it is like I'll post every 4 or 5 days if it feels like something I want to talk about or post.
And how about Instagram TV versus Instagram posts? When you were in the growth phase, were you, because I see you only have just a couple of posts for Instagram TV, so it doesn't look like you really use it that much.
Not a lot. Like I put a video out the other day about the election that I think went over 17,000 views on my Instagram TV. And it's just, if you want to do something longer, I mean, I could use it more. I don't know. I don't think people go to Instagram for long form video as much as they go to YouTube. And so I focus on YouTube for that stuff.
And this fellow,
the platforms are all very different. I think that's something that people misconstrue. Like Facebook, you should post very different than Instagram. Instagram very different than Twitter and very different than YouTube. Like they all have their purpose. So like my YouTube page is completely different looking than my Instagram. My Instagram is more who I am. I'm trying to attract people to my authentic self. My YouTube is more a teaching page. I'm doing a lot of videos about like how to do real estate or how to make your life better, all these different kinds of things like that. But I don't share everything across all platforms.
All right. So before we finish up, that was a great segue back to real estate. I want to ask you, because there's probably a couple of realtors that listen to my show, or people that listen to my show who are maybe married to a realtor, or they have a friend who's a realtor. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see real estate agents making with respect to their use of social media?
Yeah, realtors are horrible at social media. That's why I don't have to be that good to stand out. Like I get asked to speak, like at Keller Williams family reunion last year. That's our biggest training event in the country, 13,000 agents there. They had me speak about Instagram and how I use social media. And it's so funny because like it's stuff that's so basic in the regular world, but realtors are so bad at it, and it's because they can't get out of their own way. So the biggest mistake they make is they trying to sell all the time. Like, so here's the one question you have to ask yourself before you post something. Because remember, Instagram is basically a room full of all your friends. So the question I ask myself is if I was walking into a room with my friends, is this something I would share with them? And if it's not, then don't post it. So like if you want to post something cool about your trip, that's something you talk about in a room of your friends. If you're talking about your new listing, you would never walk into a room of 8 or 9 of your random friends. Like, you guys, I just listed this new house over on Sunshine Street. It's $375,000. It's 2,600 square feet. They'd be like, what the hell's wrong with you? Get out of the room. And so think of your social media the same way. Like, if you wouldn't walk into a room of your friends and share that, don't share it on your social media. It's okay to every now and then talk about stuff on your stories, but like nobody wants to, again, you're trying to attract people to your page. So if you're always turning people off because you're posting about something that doesn't affect them, like if you have followers that live in one part of the community and you're posting photos from, I don't know, just like houses from all over the place, like nobody cares about that. And so I always ask myself, like, will this make people more attracted to wanting to meet with me or talk to me, or am I pushing them away by doing this? And so that would be the first thing that I would say. And then the second thing that I would say is they're just not very consistent. Like, they'll take crummy photos, or they don't put them up often enough. You know, like I put a lot of attention into my posts or what I'm putting together. Like, I put a video on my Instagram the other day that I paid $3,500 and it took me a full day of film, like, to make, you know, but I wanted to make a really impactful video, which, and so it makes a difference. Like, I really take it serious. I think that's one mistake people make is they want to be big in social media, but they don't take it serious. They don't spend the time to take a better photo or to put, you know, the right thing together, but yet they don't understand why nobody's attracted to their page. So I think it's just taking it serious, being consistent, and just that rule of, would I share this in a room with my friends?
Yeah, I pretty much broke all those rules. I'm not consistent, and I haven't put any dedicated effort into it whatsoever. And I think I need to probably change that.
And not surprisingly, you haven't had the traction that you hoped, right? So.
Yeah, it's just never been these micro content channels. It doesn't come naturally to me to share my life on social media outside of, and I don't even have Facebook on my phone anymore after watching The Social Dilemma, but I would share with my family. But it doesn't, you know, I'm more of a long form content kind of guy, the podcasts, some videos on YouTube. But just the little micro pieces, it never occurs to me at the moment that I should be sharing that with my audience, and maybe I should and maybe I shouldn't. So if you're
by the way, it's not for everybody, you know. If it doesn't come naturally, like it does come naturally for me, I enjoy doing it, and so I do it. If it didn't, I wouldn't do it either, you know. Like LinkedIn is one that doesn't come naturally to me. It just feels so business-like to me that I don't enjoy it, so I don't really put much effort towards it. And so, like, I would say to you, if it doesn't come naturally, you don't want it. There's a million other ways to make money and get leads, so I wouldn't worry about it if it's not something you really enjoy doing. If you don't enjoy don't do it, because you won't stay consistent if you don't.
Yeah, it's not that it's painful for me. It just, I haven't bothered to work it into my weekly routine. For folks who've been listening to my show or know me or follow me, they know that I'm a super process-oriented guy. I don't do anything just like off the cuff. So if I haven't developed a process for it and scheduled it into my routine, it simply doesn't happen. And so maybe this is something that I need to start developing.
Pick 5 things you're passionate about. Pick up a system where you post once a day for 60 days. Those 5 different categories, like switching every day. Yeah. And you'll actually it's really fun because you see it start to affect people. Like, I get 15, 20 messages a day from people that really, I mean, it doesn't have some giant impact. I'm not naive, but like, they tell me, man, thank you, I needed to hear that today. Like, oh, that's a cool message. Or, hey, thanks for sharing that. Or they'll share your stuff and be like, man, everyone needs to hear this. And you start to get a little bit of that feedback. You're like, all right, this is cool. I'm making the world a little bit better place. You know, I'm making Instagram a little better place, or Twitter, or whatever it might be. And so I tell people, try it for 60 days, but like really commit for 60 days. If you start getting traction, you enjoy it, then you keep doing it. If not, then at least you know it's not your thing.
So that actually begs another question that I want to ask before we finish up is, so I know I have a Facebook group with a few thousand people in it, 3,000, something like that. And so there's lots of, the Facebook bell is constantly going off, and I feel bad. Like it's an extra burden on my time because I got to pay attention to it. And I feel bad if I don't reply to people. So as your following on Instagram grows, I mean, you're getting all these comments and so forth. That's yet another thing that you've got to manage and devote time. Or do you not worry about replying to all the comments? How do you keep on top of it?
Comments, it depends on what they comment. I try to at least like it to acknowledge the person. Like if you're not going to comment back, you're not really setting up any kind of relationship there. So it is important actually to respond to people. If people send me a direct message and it's like a real message, I always respond. I won't open it until I'm ready to respond to it because I appreciate that they've reached out. Comments, if some comments I'll respond to, other ones I won't. But I think it's important. You do have to spend the time. Like it's a real thing. Like that's why I say like if you don't enjoy it, don't do it because it takes effort. Like you're looking at 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day on social media of building it, but doing it intentionally to actually get some traction. So, a lot of people were like, I don't want to be on social media more than I have to. Then I would say stay off. Like that month I went off in September was actually really nice. Like I just stayed off for a full month. And here's the funny part is like nobody missed me. It's not like I'm that important. Like they have 1 million other people to follow. But at the end of the day, if it's benefiting your life, if you enjoy doing it, if you feel like you're getting traction with people, then do it. If not, I wouldn't worry about it because it is work.
Indeed it is. All right, Jimmy, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for making some time to come and share your wisdom with the Bright Ideas audience. If there's anyone here who wants to get in touch with you, what is the one easiest way for them to reach out to you?
Instagram, Mr. Jimmy Rex. That's the one that I respond to the best. So reach out to me on Instagram, Mr. Jimmy Rex. Send me a message and happy to help anything I can answer for you or do. Anybody that sends me a real message, like I said, I respond to. So that's the best way to follow me.
All right, Jimmy, thank you so much for being on the show. If this was a show that you enjoyed, I would love it if you would take a minute to subscribe, rate, and review the show in your favorite podcast listening app. To get to the show notes for today's episode, go to brightideas.co/346. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much for listening to the Bright Ideas Podcast. Check us out on the web at brightideas.co.
All right, show's over. I'm tired.